fear. It lurks in the shadows, waiting for you to let your guard down. It slithers through the cracks in the walls, whispering secrets of the damned. You tell yourself monsters aren't real, but what if they are? What if they're watching you right now, hiding just beyond the veil of the unknown? Tonight, we dive into the depths of terror, horrifying tales of the unexplainable, ghostly whispers in the dead of night, shadows that move when no one's there, the feeling of unseen eyes following your every step. Are you brave enough to face the darkness? Turn off the lights if you dare. The air in the restaurant was thick with the scent of candle wax and expensive wine, but Officer Daniel Mercer barely noticed. He had been working endless shifts, his mind a tangle of gruesome crime scenes and fruitless leads. A serial killer had been haunting his small town, leaving behind bodies with no pattern, no clues, only fear. The cases consumed him, the sleepless nights blending together. But tonight, for the first time in months, he had a night to himself. And now, across the table, was Violet. They had met through an impulsive decision, signing up for a dating app just days ago. The app was supposed to be a distraction, a way to push past the memories of his last relationship. His ex had been controlling, suffocating, and breaking free had cost him more than he expected. So when Violet's message popped up, he hesitated before responding. Her profile was almost too perfect. Her petite frame, long dark hair, and striking violet eyes held a hypnotic beauty. Their conversation was effortless, an uncanny compatibility that unsettled him more than it should have. And now, here she was, sitting across from him, her presence intoxicating. Her name suited her. Her eyes were the color of a bruised sky before a storm, deep and unsettling. Her hair cascaded in dark waves, gleaming under the dim lighting. She was mesmerizing, a distraction he had been desperate for. The conversation flowed easily, almost too perfectly, as if rehearsed. But each time he tried to grasp onto the feeling of familiarity, it slipped through his fingers like smoke. The hours bled into each other, the world outside forgotten. When she suggested continuing the evening at his place, a flicker of unease coiled in his gut. Yet, something about her drew him in, an irresistible pull he couldn't deny. The drive home was a blur, the silence between them heavy. His fingers drummed against the steering wheel, his nerves coiling tighter with each mile. He didn't know why. Once inside, Violet curled onto his couch with eerie ease, as if she had always belonged there. The dim light of the living room cast shifting shadows over her delicate features, exaggerating their sharpness. She kicked off her heels, tucking her legs beneath her, watching him with a small, knowing smile. Daniel busied himself with pouring wine, willing himself to shake the odd sensation crawling up his spine. He watched her from the kitchen, how her fingers traced the rim of a coaster absent-mindedly, her lips curled in the faintest of smiles. Something was wrong. Something about her presence sent his instincts into overdrive. The air felt heavier, charged with an energy he couldn't define. He carried the glasses over, handing one to her before sinking into the chair across from the couch. She swirled her wine absently, staring at the crimson liquid with an intensity that made his stomach clench. "Nice place," she murmured, her voice low, almost purring. He nodded, taking a slow sip, trying to relax. "Thanks." A silence stretched between them, not the comfortable kind. The weight of it pressed against his skin. He studied her, noting how she barely blinked, how her fingers moved slowly over the stem of her glass, as if memorizing the texture. "So," he started, but his voice trailed off. He didn't know what he wanted to ask. Who are you? Why do I feel like I've met you before? Why does my gut scream at me to run? She tilted her head. You look tired, Daniel. Do you ever stop working? He tensed at the way she said his name. Not like someone new to him, like someone who had known him for years. I try, he admitted, forcing a chuckle. But work follows me home. She took a slow sip of her wine, never breaking eye contact. You're chasing that killer, aren't you? The one in the news. His grip on his glass tightened. Yeah, must be exhausting. She sighed, shifting on the couch, trying to catch someone who doesn't want to be caught. Something about the way she said it made his skin prickle. They always slip up eventually. Do they? She smirked, watching him over the rim of her glass. Or do they just change? A cold shiver ran down his spine. He forced himself to lean back, to look casual, but his heartbeat thudded against his ribs. What do you mean? She traced the rim of her glass with a fingernail, her violet eyes gleaming. People don't just disappear, Daniel. They evolve. They blend in. They become exactly who they need to be. His breath caught in his throat. The room felt smaller. The shadows stretched longer. The air thickened with an unspoken tension, choking, suffocating. Then she spoke again, a single sentence, and the world tilted. His vision tunneled, breath seizing in his lungs. His fingers turned numb around the stem of his glass. The words she had whispered were not meant to be known by anyone but him and his ex. The blood in his veins turned to ice as he slowly turned to face her. Her smile stretched wider, grotesquely unnatural. Bones cracked. Skin rippled. The illusion shattered like brittle glass. Before him was no longer Violet, but Vanessa, his ex-girlfriend. The same woman he had loved. The same woman he had left behind. Only now, her face was wrong. Distorted. A macabre blend of features, shifting in and out of recognition, as if reality itself rejected her presence. His mind screamed at him to move, to run, but his body was rooted, paralyzed by the impossible horror unraveling before him. Vanessa. No, the thing wearing her face tilted its head, studying him with cold amusement. And then she moved, faster than thought. She was upon him. Claw-like fingers dug into his shoulders, her breath a whisper of decay against his ear. Daniel fought, shoving her back, but her strength was inhuman, her grip unyielding. Dark laughter slithered from her lips, a sound that did not belong in this world. He thrashed as she dragged him to the floor, shadows twisting around them like living things. Pain exploded in his side as her fingers plunged deep, too deep. His body convulsed, his vision blurred. The last thing he saw before darkness swallowed him was her face, warping, shifting, becoming his own. Then nothing. Morning light spilled through the blinds, casting golden beams over the quiet apartment. Daniel Mercer stood before the bathroom mirror, adjusting his collar, his reflection smiling back. But it wasn't him. The man who had been Daniel was gone, his form hollowed out and repurposed. The thing wearing his skin picked up his badge, its violet eyes gleaming with hunger. Outside, the town remained blissfully unaware. The killings would continue. The apartment was silent when Eric stepped through the front door, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint tapping of a leaky faucet. The weight of the workday clung to him, exhaustion pressing against his skull like a vise. But tonight, he had something to look forward to. His brand new virtual reality gaming headset, purchased just days ago from an obscure reseller website. The box sat on his coffee table, sleek and pristine despite its second-hand origins. The website had been strange. No customer reviews, no branding, just a few grainy photos and an unbelievable price. It had been too good a deal to pass up. Eric sat on his couch, strapped the headset on, and powered it up. The screen flickered, a nauseating wave of static before the title appeared. Asylum, The Damned. A first-person horror experience set in a long-abandoned psychiatric hospital. The promotional images had promised extreme realism, cutting-edge AI, and an immersive horror like no other. As the game loaded, his surroundings dissolved into suffocating darkness. When the world reassembled, he stood in a dimly lit corridor lined with rusted wheelchairs, overturned gurneys, and peeling wallpaper that curled like dead flesh. The air felt thick, damp, and foul, a sickly sweet stench of rot and something more sinister. His footsteps echoed as he moved forward. The flickering overhead lights buzzed like a swarm of angry insects, casting long, unnatural shadows. Something shuffled at the edge of his vision, disappearing the moment he turned to look. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He reminded himself it wasn't real. The fear wasn't real. A sound, low, guttural breathing, came from behind him. Eric turned. The corridor was empty. The silence pressed in, suffocating, as if the walls themselves were inhaling. He pressed forward, gripping the controller tightly, but the hallway seemed to stretch endlessly. He passed doors with shattered windows, their interiors cloaked in darkness. From one, he swore he saw fingers retreating into the shadows. A metallic clang rang out behind him. Spinning, he saw a heavy iron door slamming shut, sealing the way he had come. The lights flickered violently. The air grew colder. Then he saw it. A figure crouched at the end of the corridor, too far to make out details. But it was watching him, its head tilted unnaturally, a predator assessing prey. The lights failed entirely. Total darkness. The sound of nails scraping against metal filled the void. Panic surged through Eric as he fumbled with the controls. The screen remained black. Then, a searing static screeched through the headset, and when the game flickered back on, the figure was right in front of him, a gaping maw, jagged teeth, hollow, hungry eyes. Before he could react, hands, cold, impossibly strong, latched onto him. He was yanked forward, pulled past the barrier of the game's reality. The VR headset crashed to the floor of the apartment, abandoned and flickering. Hours later, his roommate, Jake, entered the apartment. The living room light was still on, but Eric was nowhere to be seen. His eyes landed on the VR headset, still powered on and running. A grin tugged at the corner of his lips. Guess he went out and left it on, Jake murmured to himself. Might as well give it a go. He sank onto the couch, pulled the headset over his eyes, and loaded into the game. The asylum loomed before him, oppressive and endless. The air felt wrong, too heavy for just a game. As he moved through the hospital's halls, something gnawed at the back of his mind. Something unsettling about the character model, the way it trembled, the silent, desperate way it clutched at its arms, the familiar clothing. Jake chuckled. Damn, this guy looks a lot like Eric. Then the character turned its head toward him, not by his own command. The digital eyes widened in horror. A scream, silent in the real world, but deafening in the game. Eric was inside. Jake's grip on the controls tightened. The character's movements weren't his own anymore. Something had shifted. The hospital's walls seemed to breathe. The shadows stretched closer. Then, a notification popped up. New player detected. Two-player mode activated. Jake's laughter died in his throat. The game wasn't just a game anymore. The darkness at the end of the corridor moved. He tried to back out, but the menu wouldn't appear. His controls weren't responding. Eric's in-game body convulsed as though resisting an invisible force. Yet it still obeyed Jake's commands. A distorted whisper crackled through his headset. "Keep playing." A door ahead creaked open. Inside was a decayed operating room filled with rusted surgical tools and blood-soaked restraints. A figure hung from the ceiling, twitching as if on invisible strings. Suddenly, Eric's body was yanked forward, his limbs moving unnaturally, controlled by something unseen. He was dragged toward the gurney in the center of the room. His silent screams flickered across the screen in the form of glitching pixels. Jake mashed buttons, trying to stop it, to free Eric, but his hands were no longer his own. He felt the cold grip of unseen hands wrapping around his wrists. His breathing turned ragged. He wasn't just playing the game anymore. He was inside too. The last thing he saw before the screen cut to black was Eric's digital face contorting into something inhuman, his mouth stretching wide in a scream of endless torment. Then, everything went dark. The VR headset lay abandoned on the floor, its screen flickering, waiting for the next player.